Welcome back to KC Talks EV. So if you haven't already realised, I am currently in the new MG5 long range. So first of all, I'd just like to thank Maple Garage for obviously lending me the car for the last 4 days in order to complete my testing. So the next video is going to be a charging curve and range test for the MG5 long range. Personally, I've been absolutely outstanded by the customer support that I've received from Maple Garage, not to mention that they have obviously been supporting the channel by lending me vehicles such as this MG5 long range. So thank you very much, Maple Garage. By the way, their link is also in the description if you would like to visit their website. Maybe you would like to have a look at their selection of cars. So today's video is going to be split into a few main sections. So first of all, we are going to talk about the changes to the MG5 long range versus the previous generation MG5. We're also going to be talking about driving and efficiency. I've now also got one of these, which is a decibel meter. So hopefully I'll be able to give a rough indication on the general refinement of the car. Next, we'll be talking about a couple rooms for improvements, so things that I have noticed that possibly could be improved on the next one, which by the way has been announced by MG as far as I'm aware. That will be released in 2022, which is a bit of an odd one. But anyway, then we'll be talking about some alternatives. So for example, what is there actually on the market? And finally, we'll be concluding by going, is this the best value proposition for an EV in 2021? And spoiler alert, I think it is. So anyway, let's get started. So to start off with, what are the major changes for this MG5 long range versus the previous generation? So first of all, we now have MG Pilot available across the entire range. That is both the exclusive and the Excite models, which is certainly a major addition compared to the previous version, which did not have that. In fact, if I was able to expand on that, that was one of the major reasons why I wasn't going to switch my MG5 EV for an MG ZS EV. Obviously, there is that element of cost, but that would definitely have been one of my reasons. To kind of extend that, I did kind of believe that, especially given the fact that the ZS EV was available and on sale, it was a bit of a short-sighted thought, and in a way I did feel as though the 5 EV was a little bit pushed too quickly to the market. Now, I completely understand the reason why MG had done so. Basically, there were no EV estate cars, well, apart from the Porsche Taycan Gran Turismo, which isn't really in the same price range. But as a result, I did kind of understand the reason why, but it was a little bit short-sighted as I thought. So it is definitely a welcome addition now to have that. Another aspect from that is, first of all, MG Pilot now has regen. My ZS EV, even after all the comfort updates and things like that, still doesn't have that feature. So that is definitely a welcome addition. And finally, because of all the technology that drives MG Pilot, we now have autonomous emergency braking and a lot more safety features like that now available on the MG5 EV. Another aspect of it that I don't have in my notes, but I'll definitely mention, is the fact that now the roof bars are validated to take 75 kilograms of load. They are not, I think the term was decorative, as MG Motor UK put previously. That is certainly absolutely amazing. In fact, actually, I talked about the MG5 long range in my video for the EV Festival, which you can have a look here as well. And that is certainly brilliant for anyone who needs to carry things like a roof box or any load on the roof. Finally, it wouldn't really be a proper impressions video if we didn't talk about this, but finally the range and the total battery pack size has increased. So it's increased from 52.5 kilowatt hours to 61.1 kilowatt hours total, and the usable capacity has increased from 48.8 kilowatt hours to 57.7. In fact, actually, I have also tested the range and the charging curve test, where I also test the available capacity, which will be released after this. Please make sure you subscribe and click on that bell icon to be informed when that video is released. So I think those cover the major changes for the MG5 long range. So the next part we're going to talk about is driving, noise, and efficiency. So in this section, we're going to talk about driving, noise, and efficiency. So to start off with, handling wise, again, it's not exactly going to be a particularly fun car, but it definitely handles better than, for example, the ZS EV that I currently have. And that is mostly due to the decreased ride height compared to the ZS EV. For example, it doesn't roll as much into corners, and that definitely imparts some level of whether or not it handles better. Again, as I said, it's not exactly a fun car, but it has definitely better poise compared to the ZS EV, although I don't really think that's a particularly fair comparison. But I should also mention that, as with many EVs, if you put your foot down when the car's least expecting it, it will wheel spin. As far as I'm aware, I think this car is on Bridgestone Ecopia tyres, so I don't know whether that takes into account anything, but yeah, put your foot down, it wheel spins. Again, I finally bought a sound meter so I can talk about noise in the cabin. So I actually measured this at 70 miles an hour to be 73.1 decibels. So what I'll probably do is, on that same stretch or a similar stretch of road, I will then compare it every other future car that I, for example, give my impressions for, and I might even do my ZS EV as a benchmark. Finally, I just want to mention about efficiency. Now, my total stuff about efficiency will be in the charging curve test and the range test video, which will be the next video to be released. But on my regular commute to Grimsby, I've had this car for 4 days. I've been taking it day-to-day usage, including my commute. I got around 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is slightly higher than in similar conditions than my ZS EV, and that should be expected given the fact that this is more sleeker in shape. It probably, definitely is more aerodynamic compared to the ZS EV. So I think that's pretty much it for that. I think the next section we'll talk about is some things that I do feel as though still need to be improved, but definitely in terms of the changes, they're definitely welcome, and these are almost nitpicking really. So as I said, this next section is going to be talking about some rooms for improvement. Now, to be honest with you, this is definitely nitpicking, but I might as well mention them to have a bit more of a balanced view. So first of all, the auto high beam is not very good. In fact, actually, that's the case for my ZS EV as well. This car, as I've noticed, what it likes to do is, as a car is going further away from you, once it gets to a certain distance, it turns on your high beams. For some reason, then it thinks, oh, it's a bit too close still, and effectively turns them off, flashing someone pretty much. So I really want to know what that person in front of me feels like, and also the people on the oncoming carriageway, because it doesn't do this just once. It does this multiple times and is quite annoying. So what I would suggest is, and I'll put a bit of a clip here, turn off your auto high beam. All you have to do is go into car, comfort and convenience, and switch off that switch for auto high beam. That would definitely be a recommendation that I have. So, and interestingly, it does also remember that setting. Moving on to remembering settings, I have also noticed that, at least for this particular car, it doesn't recognize or remember the setting for automatic handbrake. It actually defaults it to off. Now, if I'm perfectly honest with you, I have got used to that fairly quickly. My ZS EV remembers that setting, and I do like that feature. The only benefit that I can think of is that I go to automatic car washes quite a lot, and essentially the attendant gets really annoyed at you when you don't turn off automatic handbrake and you don't put this car in neutral. So I guess that is a benefit if you really want one, but overall I would like it to remember features such as that. Finally, there is one major feature that is missing compared to the ZS EV, and that is blind spot monitoring and also rear drive alert. Rear drive alert didn't come in handy until I was parked in one of those parking spaces where it's not a 90-degree angle, so therefore it's quite difficult to see out. That being said, though, the blind spots around this car are absolutely fine anyway, so just a bit tricky, but it would be quite useful to have that. And again, blind spot monitoring, the fact that it doesn't have it was a bit of an odd decision, if I'm honest, or whether or not it's a decision at all. But it's not the worst thing in the world, and most certainly the fact that it had the other changes that I spoke to in the previous section most certainly make up for them. And I probably should also mention, actually, you can't get a panoramic roof option for the MG5 long range. That is definitely more of a want. You don't need it, realistically. It was quite nice to have it, and it definitely makes the ZS EV's cabin a bit more airy, but if I'm honest, it really isn't. It really isn't a room for improvement. It's just more of a want. So the next section that I want to talk about is whether or not this car is a great value proposition. So this section we're going to talk about is whether or not the MG5 long range is a great value proposition. And if you want to skip through this, the answer is yes, it is definitely a great value proposition. But I'll explain why. So when you look at things like the EV database, and if you scroll through, you can actually select best price per range per price, for example. Bear in mind, it is assuming things like list price with the EV database. And in fact, actually, I think it's also assuming the base model for each individual car. Both the MG5 long range and the new ZS EV are up there for value. Now, other alternatives include things like the Kona 64 kilowatt, the Zoe ZE50, as well as the VW ID3 Pro. But actually, in fact, out of all of those three, this car definitely beats it for things like practicality, especially things like the boot in the back. I'll show you a bit of a clip of it, but I think it's 580 litres. Not to mention that estate body style does make things a lot easier when it comes to that sort of thing. And then when you compare things like lease pricing, so bear in mind this obviously changes pretty much almost every minute as far as I'm aware, and I did look up Drive Electric. If you're assuming 10,000 miles per year, 4-year lease, 3 months initial rental on Drive Electric, the MG5 long range comes up at £15,402. The Kona 64 Premium, oh by the way, the long range was exclusive trim, so you do get all the stuff here that is available. The Kona is £18,018 total cost, and the ZE50 GT line is now £19,890. I say is now because they were giving some absolutely cracking deals on the ZE50 up until one point in time. So most certainly I would say that this car is definitely a great value proposition, especially now the fact that the MG ZS isn't quite out yet. I think a couple people have had them in a couple dealers, but essentially if you ordered one now, you would probably get the long range much quicker than the ZS, the new ZS EV at least. So, and then when you factor in things like boot space and the space in the cabin, the value proposition really increases significantly. So yes, this car is definitely a great value proposition. And I think now is the perfect good time to go straight to the conclusion. And what do I actually think overall about the MG5 long range? So to conclude this video, overall, when I look back on, for example, my MG5 EV impressions video, the one thing that I would have said was whether or not it was worth buying it over the ZS EV. And for me at least, having that level of kit, having that level of features, things like the panoramic sunroof made it feel more premium, and having MG Pilot made things easier. So I would have probably recommended, if you didn't need the additional range that you got with the 5 and you didn't mind the SUV body style, I would have definitely pushed you towards the ZS EV. Now, however, I would definitely say that by far, if you're going to buy, for example, right this second, so if you're looking at the previous generation ZS EV, unless it was significantly discounted, the MG5 long range is most certainly one of the best, if not the best value proposition EV right this second. Now, the only car that I can think of that will affect what I'm about to say is things like the Aura Cat, which looks as though to be very good value. But unfortunately, the one thing is that in terms of boot and practicality, it's not going to be matched by the 5 EV, or the 5 long range, I should say. So with all of these new features, and bear in mind, as far as I'm aware, the increase in price was, I think, what, £1,500 over list compared to the previous generation. It is certainly a great value EV. If not, it is the best value EV on sale today. And I think MG Motor UK should definitely pat themselves on the back for what they've effectively achieved, which is a good, affordable car for the masses, which personally we don't have enough of, especially in the EV marketplace. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of my impressions video. So if you liked this video or you found it informative, please give it a like, dislike it. If you didn't, please share this video to anyone who's considering buying an MG5 long range, or especially actually the range and the charging curve test video, which will be released after this. So please make sure you are subscribed and you click on that bell icon to be informed of that video. But I think that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and talk to you later.